What's up, everyone? Welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast that takes a trip down Philly sports memory lane. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery, and it's NFL Draft Week. And instead of taking a trip down memory lane, we're going to focus on what's coming up this week and see basically where we feel the Eagles are going to go, what they need. And I think in recent memory, this is probably one of my most anticipated drafts in a while. Not only are you coming off the loss in the Super Bowl, it's, I think, the way they looked the entire season, the way they looked in the playoffs, and even in the Super Bowl for the most part. Defensively, yeah, but that's another story for another episode. But Howie's been busy this offseason, and I think going into the offseason, I would have said, yeah, it's going to be tough. You're going to have guys that now are like, hey, I'm a Super Bowl player, or I'm this, and I want more money. And you also have what comes with being as successful as they were, guys that are all pros, guys that are making Pro Bowl, who obviously want to have that bump in salary. One thing Howie's done a lot of over the course of the probably past 5 years is sign a lot of guys to those prove-it deals, which if you have those prove-it deals, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or whatever at lower money, they're going to want, once they prove it, they're going to want to get paid. And heading into this offseason, I feel as though that's what Howie's biggest goal was sorting through that. Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to re-sign? And then how are you going to replace some of the guys you're going to let go? Obviously, to me, the most important part of this offseason was getting Jalen Hurts signed long-term. And the way Howie went about doing that is amazing. He signed the $255 million extension. And if you listen to This Day in Philly Sports History, we talked a lot about this. The fact that $179 million of that is guaranteed. But the way it's structured over the course of the life of that contract, I mean, it's a $6 million hit this coming year for 2023. Then it goes up to like 14 the next year, and then 21, 22 the next year, 31, 32 the next year, and then 2027 you have it's a 40 or a $30 million hit. And then it goes to 45 or whatever the exact numbers are, which seems like a lot, but keep in mind you're thinking about that in terms of this year's salary cap. That doesn't take into account that the salary cap is going to go up. It's projected, I believe, to go up each year until then, an extra $20 to $50 million, depending on when certain things go. Then you get into what those I don't know, like what they call them the restructured years, but you never know what's going to happen at that point. I mean, I think at one point in 2028, when Jalen Hurts is 30, it's going to be a $55 million cap hit or something like that, which again sounds crazy, but that's 5 years from now. And if the cap continues to go up, this is going to be a steal. It's no different than like the Bryce Harper contract or the Trey Turner contract or things like that. Then there's ways to get out of it and different things like that. But I feel at that point, Jalen's only going to be 30. You can make a decision there then. Okay, how are we going to do this? Are we going to restructure it to set us up good? Are we going to give you more guaranteed money? I mean, it is quite possible as well that that's it. Like, okay, we need to move on. So I think it works out well for both the Eagles as well as Jalen Hurts. And his press conference, and yes, it's easy to say when you have $179 million in the bank that, hey, money is nice, but championships are better. But I really believe he means that, because you look at a guy, excuse me, like a Lamar Jackson, and I'm not saying anything negative about Lamar Jackson, but he's really, and he's also represented himself, which I think is probably hurting him somewhat, but he's looking for fully guaranteed, and you're not going to get a fully guaranteed contract in the NFL. And the fact that Hurts signed first, I think, kind of hinders Lamar Jackson, but I think Hurts is putting weight, and it's something he's done every step of his career. like I saw an interview where he was just so happy to win the national championship at Alabama, even though he got benched for Tua at halftime of that game. The guy is just a class act all the way around. So I think when you see him say money's nice, but championships are better, I mean, look at guys like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, guys with that desire, even Tom Brady. Like, yeah, I mean, all of them left money on the table. And Jordan, yeah, he got paid, but he made sure he had guys in place to build that team around. Kobe, very similar situation. He won a championship and went to finals without Shaq. So everybody's like, oh, Kobe and Shaq. No, but they allowed the team to be built around them. Tom Brady for years didn't get paid for that. So I think the fact that Hurts stayed within the CBA, he did the union right by signing this contract, but at the same time, he's setting himself up to be successful and to win championships because he knows, hey, I can't do anything without them. All right, so that chalk one up for Howie for that contract because I think that's the biggest need you had going into this offseason, and it really is going to impact your team now going forward, like I said, for the next 5 years. So to get that done and do it in a way that is beneficial for both sides, I mean, you can't. It's Howie just doing Howie things. He's out here playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. But what else did he have to do? I mean, he had some tough decisions, and he let some guys walk. Hargrave being one. I mean, I can't believe he went to the Niners and already started whining, but we'll see. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was another, and make of that what you want. I still think that his agency and representation fucked that up somehow, where I don't know what they did, but he ended up being on a prove-it deal now with Detroit, and he could have had probably more guaranteed money if he had stayed with the Eagles, but it is what it is. I think one of the underrated things that he did was the whole Darius Slay thing, and the being able to not only restructure him, make Slay happy, but allow him to pretty much probably finish out his career with the Eagles. Amazing. Then bringing back Fletcher Cox for a year. Boston Scott, Travis Kelce, Brandon Graham. Those guys coming back on 1-year deals, you're going to have to mix it up. You've got to have some young guys, but you need that veteran presence. And so to have a guy like Brandon Graham, a guy like Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce, those are guys who are the heart and soul of this team. So to bring them back for that leadership and just their presence, their experience is amazing. And then he gave James Bradbury a more of a long-term deal, which is good. Bringing a guy like Rashad Penny on a prove-it deal. Terrell Edmonds from Pittsburgh on a prove-it deal. Olamide Zaccheaus, he signed him long-term. He saw the potential in him, and I think he's probably not ever going to be, as long as you have AJ and Devontae here, he's never gonna be more than a number 3 receiver. But what Olamide does now, he lit a fire under some guys on that team, and I don't know why his name is slipping me right now. Oh my goodness. Either way, he's already come out and said, I'm gonna make you eat those words, and he's basically saying, no, this is not Quez Watkins. Sorry, my mind went blank and I had to look it up. But Quez Watkins now is pissed off. You don't think a pissed off Quez Watkins for your third receiver is going to be a good thing? Absolutely. Sign a guy like Nick Morrow to a 1-year deal. Greedy Williams to a 1-year deal. These are all low risk, high reward signings, but they still need to have guys ready to take over and groom guys to take over. Now, any one of those guys could come in and have a career year and work his way into the Eagles' long-term plans. But what that's going to require now is how he's going to have to do his magic in the draft, which I will say, for the most part and overall, Howie's not a terrible drafter. If you kind of go back through and look through the hit and success rate of the guys he's brought in, take away receiver, And I know that was a big part of Howie's legacy right now. It's a big part of what people criticize him for. But take away that, he's actually had some pretty decent drafts. And I mean, I think if you look at the 2016 draft, the 2017 draft, the guys that they were able to contribute to that Super Bowl team, that was Howie doing Howie things. I do think with some of the guys leaving, one of the big things to me I'm excited to see is Nakobe Dean. Like, Nakobe Dean is going to be one of the starters, and I think he's ready. I thought he was a steal in that draft last year, and these are the kind of picks now. This year, he has to be on the field and contribute to this team, and if he's not, then you start getting yourself into trouble. But this is part of Howie's mystique and part of Howie's magic. This is what he does. So, with all that being said, I think the Eagles are set up to be competitive for years to come. And the other beauty of Howie, and the other thing that he does very, very well, is stockpiling draft picks. So currently, the Eagles are in a tough spot this draft because they do have the 2 first rounds. They have their pick at 30th, and they have the number 10 pick from the Saints. So you have 2 picks in the first round, then they have their second, third, and then they don't pick again until the 7th. Now, there are many, many, many different ways that this can go for Howie Roseman and the Eagles. I have my opinion, and truthfully, there's not really anybody that probably knows anything about it except for Howie. And for me, I think he knows what he's going to do. He's just kind of keeping it close to the vest, which as well he should. But I think the big question for everybody, and I don't want to drag this on for 10 hours, 12 hours, because I'm not Mel Kiper. I'm not Todd McShay. I don't know the draft report cards for all of these players. And again, I want to focus mainly on these 2 picks because once you get past the first round, it's really a crapshoot with teams trading and things like this. But what are they going to do with number 10? And I think there's a couple different ways they can go. I think this week there's been a lot of buzz about Bijan Robinson. He came out and said there are 2 quarterbacks he wants to play for, Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Eagles have a need at running back. They have those guys in like Boston Scott and Gainwell, and they have guys, but what they need to do is they don't have anybody moving forward. They don't have that number 1 guy. And Penny's a very, very good back. He can't stay healthy. Maybe this is the year he does. I don't know. But letting Miles Sanders walk, I think, was the right decision. But now who are you going to put in to replace Miles? And I think Bijan's a good pick. I don't necessarily see the Eagles with a ton of needs right now from a starting standpoint. They do have some holes that they could use some depth in, like on the bench. So they could use some secondary depth. They could use some depth at linebacker. Never can have too much depth on the defensive line or the offensive line. But I think they're in a position that if you're going to make a move like this and really solidify your offense, I think if Bijan Robinson is there at 10, which the way the first round is shaping up, a lot of teams are going to need quarterbacks. A lot of teams are going to need edge rushers, and it's top heavy with that. So I think Bijan Robinson would be a good fit. Now, whether or not Howie goes through with that, I don't know. There was also rumors about Derrick Henry that the Titans GM kiboshed the other day. But who would you rather have? Derrick Henry at 10 or whatever $1 million a year he's going to be making this year, or Bijan Robinson, who's younger, has a very similar skill set, I would say, in the sense that he's a bigger back. I think he has better hands than Derrick Henry, and truthfully, Derrick Henry's the kind of back that you're going to need to give him 20, 25 carries a game. Is there 20, 25 carries a game to give Derrick Henry in this offense? While it's name recognition, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to trade for Derrick Henry. I feel like you're treading down that whole Chip Kelly era when he brought in DeMarco Murray and Ryan Mathews just was like, hey, these are names. I think Bijan Robinson is a good fit for this team. You can get him the ball 10, 15 times a game, and it'll fit into the offense. And I think he's a slightly more talented that Miles Sanders. And I know there's a lot of comparisons that he is comparable to Saquon Barkley. So I don't know. If they go that way, that's what I don't know. But I hope they don't go the way of Derrick Henry because I don't think he's a fit for this offense. Obviously, you could always go line depth, and it's one of those not so sexy picks that you pick, and then 5 years from now when you still have one of the best offensive lines in the league, you're kind of just like, oh yeah, you do need to get those guys. So you never want to say that. Then there's some other guys that maybe they'll fall to him. Somebody like Jalen Carter. He has the off-the-field issues because of his involvement in the car accident that killed one of the trainers and I think a student, or I don't think it was a player, but either way. Then now there's starting to become questions about his effort in practice and just what he gives. But talent-wise, the dude is a beast. And could the Eagles use him on the defensive side of the ball? Absolutely, because they're going to need somebody to basically replace Fletcher Cox, who's on that 1-year deal. You have Brandon Graham, who probably only has another year or so left. And would you take a chance on it? The Eagles have, I was talking to a good friend of mine last night, the Eagles have the guys in the locker room to help curb and curtail a lot of those character issues. So maybe you do take a flyer on him if he drops to 10, which everybody's saying he's dropping. He's probably not going to drop outside of the top 10. I think it's worth it. Do they go with a safety and add some safety depth? I don't know that there's necessarily a safety that's worth drafting at 10. Maybe they trade back then and get a couple extra picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Who knows? Cornerback, Devon Witherspoon. I don't know if he'll be there. He might. I doubt that. I'm sure he's going to get picked. Same way with a guy like Will Anders. Then maybe they trade back a little bit and take a guy like Joey Porter Jr. and add to the secondary depth. I don't know. Maybe they surprise us. Maybe like the one position I think that we absolutely, that I haven't mentioned, that we absolutely need some depth at is tight end. I mean, we have Goddard and Stoll there, but I mean, Stoll filled in pretty adequately when Goddard was hurt, but I don't think he's that elite level. So maybe they go with a tight end to add some depth there. Who knows? I think you're in a good spot, and Howie knows what's going on. He's going to have to let the board play out the first few picks. So that's where we're at. I would love to see Bijan Robinson. I don't know if the Eagles will do it. I would love to see them take Bijan Robinson, trade that 30th pick, and get an extra pick later, maybe an extra 2 picks later. But if you're going to have a top 10 pick as a Super Bowl team, you might as well go for you make a splash, because I don't necessarily foresee any way that Bijan Robinson will not be there or will not make an impact on this team. The question then becomes, will he be there? I don't know. And I think what they do at 10 is going to determine what they do with that 30th pick, because there is a good chance, and obviously a lot's going to be determined by how the draft goes. But if you're going to take this running back at 10, you better be sure that he's the real deal, which everybody out there is saying. And then you need to make sure you hit the rest of these picks. There's also Jahmyr Gibbs, who's from Alabama, who is comparable to Bijan Robinson, who might actually be there when the Eagles pick at 30. Maybe if they are going to target a running back, maybe they see how that first few picks go, decide, you know what, Robinson's going to be, or Gibbs is going to be there, so let's trade the 10th and then use some of what we get back for that to move up maybe into the early 20s, late teens to take him. there's so many options, and I think they're in a good spot because much like a fantasy draft, when you draft at number 10 in a fantasy draft, you kind of have an idea on who's going to be off the board. And I think for the most part, Howie has a good idea out of 10 players who 4 to 6 of them are going to be. So I'm sure he has targeted, and if these guys are here, I'm going this. I would imagine. I've never been in an NFL draft room. I would hope that he puts in at least the same amount of effort that I put into a fantasy football draft, where I know if X happens, I'm going YZ. If Y happens, I'm going WZ, or whatever it may be, whatever letters you want to use. I'm not trying to turn this into algebra. But I think that's what they do at 10. And then at 30, I think you got to take the best available. I think you need to focus on your offensive line. You need to focus on linebacker and the secondary. So you see where it comes, and if there's nobody on your board that you really want to take that trade out of it, because many teams are going to be wanting to get back into the first round or get into the first round. So you have that. I think there's a couple different things they can do. I think there's pick at 10 and then pick at 30. You just pick players at both picks. Know that you're going to get 2 of the top 30 ranked players on your board. Probably, I would say that's the least likely scenario, because I know Howie wants to accumulate that draft capital, and they're usually pretty good with finding steals late in the draft. They could trade 10 to get that capital, pick at 30. They could pick at 10, trade 30. You just never know. And then they could end up somehow, they have guys that they like. They might trade completely out of the first round. I don't necessarily think that is a likely scenario, but with Howie, honestly, you never know. There could be a trade that he makes. I know that why can't I think of his name? I'm sorry. I'm like completely drawing blanks tonight. Austin Eckler. I kept wanting to say Eccles. Austin Eckler. There's a rumor that the Chargers are shopping him, and the Eagles were linked to him. So you just never know. And I think what they need to do, no matter how they do it, they need to get a player that's going to be a starter and make an impact on this team next year with one of those 2 first picks. Whether that is somebody they draft, whether that is trading capital to get a player in, that's what they need. And I think, to me, the best case scenario for the Eagles is they get a stud with number 10. Whether it's Carter, Anders, Robinson, somebody who comes in and starts immediately. Like, could you imagine Carter on that team with the line that they have? I think you don't necessarily miss a beat then with Hargrave not being there. Or Robinson. Put Robinson on that offense. There's rumors and anonymous interviews from many of NFC front office people and coaching staffs that are saying, like, hey, that's the last team we want Robinson to go to, because how are you going to guard that? Are you going to put a spy on Hurts and let one of the receivers or one of the running backs beat you? Are you going to double team AJ and let Devontae open, or open it up for a running back, Devontae, and leave AJ open, and then all of a sudden, or you're going to single coverage everybody and then let your linebacker or even your cornerback at that point get juked by Hurts? So I think it presents so many matchup nightmares. And if you look at what Kansas City does, that's their MO. They bring guys. They're like an offensive factory. They bring in these fast guys and create matchup problems for everybody. Why not? Why can't the Eagles do that? And then you focus then on depth at the next picks. You get somebody for 1 or 2 guys for your secondary. You get an offensive lineman, draft a linebacker, and set yourself up. I don't know. I think the medium best case scenario is an offensive line, and like I said, we're at number 10, and then they trade 30 and kind of build around what they have and get some backup and depth. And again, that's not sexy. It's one of those things where I remember when we drafted Lane Johnson, and I know that was Chip Kelly, but we drafted Lane Johnson, and it was just like, oh, great. And it's like, it's the right thing to do, but it's just like, man, it's not that good. And now look at it, like I'm glad we have him, because looking back, we wouldn't have been we wouldn't have won a Super Bowl. We wouldn't be where we are without him. It's just one of those, oh yeah, great. It's like if you're on a diet and everybody's eating this like cake around you and you have to eat a salad. It's like, this is what's the best for you. You don't want to do it, but once you lose that weight and get into your beach body, you're going to be like, yeah, it was worth it. I'm glad I did it. That's what, to me, an offensive lineman in the first round is. It's not pretty. It is but it's durable. Like, it's not the shiny fast car. It's not going to break down on you. Might not look the best. Might have a couple scratches, but it's going to be reliable for years to come. Obviously, the worst case scenario is probably Howie's worst nightmare. Probably keeps him up at night. All you got to do is two names: Jalen Reagor, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and then even going back further, John Harris and those guys. We talked about Broderick Bunkley today on This Day in Philly Sports History. You don't want to have 5 years from now him showing up, whoever you pick, you don't want them showing up on Eagles' biggest draft pick bust list. That cannot happen. And I think being that that's the worst case scenario, if that happens, it does undermine and take some of the luster away of some of the moves that you've made now this entire offseason. So let's hope we come out with the best case scenario. Obviously, Robinson or one of the other two guys, or the old reliable offensive lineman. I don't want to see anything like Reagor, Whiteside, John Harris, Broderick Bunkley, Mike Mamula, any of those guys. Antone Davis. No, none of that. All right, so looking ahead, what do we think they're going to do on Thursday night? Personally, as much as I want them to take Robinson, I think there's too much talk about them taking him to make it likely, if any of that makes sense. I feel like Howie has his target, and I think what he's doing is somehow, and they all float out rumors and things like that. I would love to see it. I don't see Robinson as the guy the Eagles are going to take. That does not mean they're not going to somehow try to trade up from 30 or trade 10 down to maybe get Gibbs. I think running back is in play for this team. There's just way too many question marks in that running back room right now, and they don't have the alpha. I would say Rashad Penny is probably the closest you have, but like I said, he can't stay healthy. So running back is definitely on the table. I do think they're going to trade out of 10. I think there's just so much. Howie loves his draft capital and having the flexibility to fling draft picks, and he's done well at it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it in a negative way, but he's able to move and flip those draft picks for more draft picks and get players and position himself to be set up year after year after year. The fact that they don't have as many draft picks as they normally do right now, basically because they traded for I don't even remember at this point how they got that other top 10 pick, but I know that they lost some picks and bringing A.J. Brown in, which is perfectly fine. That paid off. But I think that is likely the way they're going to do it. It's not going to be sexy. They're going to draft a lineman. Maybe they get lucky and one of the defensive backs are there and they can do that. But I think what we're going to see is offensive line acquire some of that draft capital, and then you're going to see him make his moves in the later rounds and basically do his thing. So moving forward, after the draft? It's hard to say, but I think as the team is constructed right now, obviously they're one of the better teams, top teams in the NFC again. Certainly the division. I think that the Giants got better. Cowboys, I'm not real sure, to be honest. They're just always the Cowboys. And we know that somehow, some way, Dak's going to put up great numbers but choke at some point. That's his basic MO. Washington is the wild card. I'm disappointed to see that Daniel Snyder is going. I don't know where they are in this process of selling the team, but I think it was always like a security blanket with Daniel Snyder there because you knew he was going to mess something up. Now that he's out and Josh Harris is in, he was able to turn around the Sixers. You see where we are. He was able to turn around the Nets, and Washington is his hometown team. So that maybe not for this year. Moving forward, Washington does scare me because he's not afraid to spend the money, and that being his hometown team, that although it could work out in our advantage, I don't think so. So is the window open? 100%. I think for the time being, you have that window propped open for the next 4 to 5 years. Once you get to year 5 of the new 5 years from now with Jalen Hurts' contract, I think you need to reevaluate, and we'll see where we are. You never know what's going to happen. Is he living up to the contract? Do you get out of the contract? There's ways around to do that. I think you need more of the draft picks to hit than not, and it starts this week. Howie needs to make sure more draft picks hit than don't. And if that means trading back out of top 10 to accumulate that capital, again, it's not sexy, but I'm okay with it. So what I expect to see come Sunday morning is we're going to have a couple offensive linemen. We're going to have some depth at defensive back. We're going to have a running back. And then I want to see who he picks up in the undrafted because they've always done well at that too. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he surprises everybody, takes Robinson and says, let's run this thing back and let's just win the whole fucking thing. Let's beat Andy Reid in Andy Reid's game. Hopefully, but I nothing that Howie's ever done has led me to believe that, and I hope he's not gun shy because of some of the other misses, but he has led us to a Super Bowl. He's led us to an NFC championship. He's done pretty well. He's very underrated. But I will do, next week we'll do the draft recap, go through the picks, see what Howie did versus what we wanted, what we saw, and just get a good focus then on when or how this team's going to go. I know the schedule release is coming out soon. It doesn't happen. It usually happens not long after the draft. If I could somehow tie that in together, I would love to do that. But it's draft time. I am working on possibly, and I don't want to throw this. I'm not even going to throw it out there because I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. And I probably already did that. But just be sure to check, and so you don't miss anything, be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we'll leave it at that. We've also been doing Draft Pick Spotlight on this day in Philly sports history, so be sure to check that out every day wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on the YouTube channel. As I mentioned, we did Broderick Bunkley today. I'm able to say it much better now than what I was this morning. Be sure to follow me on social media, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Jimbo_Mont, Instagram, Philly Jimbo. Like and subscribe to both podcasts. Tell your friends, get them listening. The more people that like, the more people that subscribe, the better it is for the algorithm. I'm trying to grow this thing. I have some things in the work. I've been reaching out to people and trying to look for ways to grow it. And that it all starts with you. If you like what you're listening to, please tell somebody else, and let's grow this thing, and let's make it big. But let's hope that also that Howie doesn't screw up on Thursday. But go have yourselves a week. I'll see you next week with the draft recap, as well as we're going to do a special 2 episodes next week because we also will preview the Sixers playoff series against either Boston or Atlanta. Go Hawks. But have yourselves a week, and until next time, this is Jim Montgomery. This is Back to the Future, and I will see you when I see you.